Welcome back, everybody. I got James and Nabil with me as always. How you guys doing?
Good. Your boys are coming to you live from CT.
What up?
That's Central Time, not Connecticut, right?
Not Connecticut.
No,
Nabil,
not about that East Coast life.
yeah. Nabil, I am just happy to see you. I'm happy to see that you have power and Wi-Fi. I'm happy that everything is hopefully going Gucci down there in Tejas. How is it? How's the move?
Move is good. Move is good. Tejas is Tejas, We have Abbott, the idiot governor, which great. Now this is gonna get flagged for something, I'm sure, but people say worse. But otherwise, like things are good. It's like what's different than living in San Francisco compared to here is like there it's like everyone's generally on the same page, and you have some people who are like trying to bend the rules. Like here, there are just people blatantly just fuck the rules.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's culturally, I'm already having to figure that part out without really having experienced the entire city yet. But I've been able to get out. Me and Taylor and Patrick played foot golf.
Nice.
So that was fun. This is my first time ever doing that. We're actually thinking of doing it tomorrow. So maybe it becomes a nice little fun thing to do till football season starts.
I got a tea time with Hunter actually this afternoon. I'm looking forward to getting a little ball golf out there. But I'm bummed that we can't play. We've only got one outing before you left, but we'll have to
it's not over. I'm sure I'll be back for a few weekends. So
cool. And James, how are you on this fine Saturday morning?
Doing good. The snow's finally starting to melt here. We had like a bunch on the ground for weeks, and sun's shining, so no complaints.
Nice. Yeah. Well, it's taken us a while, a few natural disasters to finally get all three. I didn't want to do a recap of the season without everybody here, especially since we had a run of either James or Nabil just having technical issues or things pop up. But it is Saturday, March 6th, and we're going to try to just recap a little bit of the Splatty season, talk about some rule changes, possibilities for next year, look at the Superbowl and the whole playoffs since we missed all of that. It should be a good time. And because it's Saturday morning and not Wednesday or Tuesday night, I got nothing but time on my hands. So hopefully you guys too. Let's start with the Splatty Bowl recap. Obviously, we'd had Travis and Ryan on here before. Travis ended up winning 120-109. Let's pull up that matchup, but either one of you thoughts just like on how the Splatty Bowl went? Like, I don't know, it just from what your memory serves you, or if you check out my screen, you've got the recap of the points. What anything in particular stand out to either one of you?
You want to drop that bench so we can maybe take a peek, see if there's any wrong moves, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, clearly
I remember discussing the Mahomes Kelsey stack for Rocha being important, and in a low scoring game, it's surprising to see he still got 40 combined out of both of them.
43.
Still not enough. Yeah.
Especially when the because we also mentioned the Murray, and then he did not end up playing Christian Kirk, but the potential Murray stack. I mean, if you look at Travis's points, a lot of single digits. It doesn't necessarily look like something that wins a title, but obviously the goose egg from Davis here did not help Ryan in the slightest. Did he even get a target?
I don't actually. I vaguely remember him not. Oh, I guess there it is right there. There's the zero.
2 targets.
So, yeah, I mean, he got 2 targets. It's just unfortunate, right? Like a pretty average day from Davis would, could have put him in contention for winning. And, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that I don't think it's great that someone who's 7-6 toppled the Goliath here. And
yes and no, but you got to Travis had a ton of points, and realistically, he had a lot of bad luck. If you as far as the schedule goes, if you remember, if we look at the standings here, Travis had the most amount of points. He also he was 7-6, but his schedule was brutal. So I think he's just a very deserving champion. I mean, if you look at the points that are put up against him, 150s, 160s commonly, like after from week 7 on until the last week of the season, he had 100 plus points against him to deal with. Like he had a lot of points against him. And I think that shows almost 1,600. So he's about.
But I guess my larger point on that is this is a really good reason on why, here, can you go to his actual schedule?
Yeah.
Because what I mean by that is there's a point sometimes where if you look, most of his losses were in the beginning, right? So many teams, I feel like we start contemplating throwing your season by week 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important reason. He's always put up the point. He's been unlucky. You can easily get in that mindset where, maybe this just isn't my year. I'm just not getting it. But that's what I mean. He toppled, Ryan was pretty consistent at winning, obviously 11-2. And so for Travis to get this win shows that maybe it's not worth thinking about tanking and selling just because you go off right there. What is he by week 6? 3-3?
Yeah, he's 1-3, and then he rattles off 5 in a row. So that gets him up to 6-3. And then you're thinking, okay, you're good. And then he's almost stumbling across the finish line, with the 3 losses before the
3 losses with 111, 112, 104. That's another reason to start thinking my season might be done. Right. So that's,
I
think there was a couple injuries.
Was that a win or go home situation for him against Kevin in the last week? I can't remember.
It's been a few months.
No, I think because I do remember that I had a spot locked up. He might have needed to win that technically, or maybe he was going to get in on the tiebreaker. But overall, just looking at it was an ugly playoffs. As far as Travis is concerned too, where'd he go? 122, 127, 120. That is that magic number we always talk about. If you're in the 120s, you have a chance, but you didn't blow anyone away. But he was consistent enough, to get it done.
He also went against opponents with 108, 108, 109. So
he finally got lucky. That's the thing is he finally got
the Philadelphia Eagles of the.
Yeah. Well, so one
winning
thing
with Nick Foles is
so something I would how many, so kind of following your point, Nabil, okay, we kind of give up pretty early, or there's that tendency to at least talk about okay, just sell for the draft. So obviously Rocha is 1 win away, he's 1 week away from winning it all. Kevin puts up 192 in championship week after losing in the 3rd place. So he's 1 win away from winning it all. Then you look at myself, if I beat Travis, right? If I have a better week here, I end up beating Kevin in the championship, and I would have, or in the semifinal, and I would have beat Ryan in the finals. I'm only 1 win away from a title. Drew. Also, if Drew wins his against Spencer in the quarterfinals, then it's not Spencer versus Rocha. It's actually Spencer would actually have played Travis, and Drew beats Travis and then wins it. 4 teams were one win away from winning. Me, Travis, Rocha, and Kevin are all 1 win away from winning it all. Period. This league was a gauntlet this year as far as much as it looked like Rocha and Kevin kind of had the best 2 teams, and Travis was also one of the best teams in there. We were so close. So the 4 teams are so close, and Travis barely squeaked it out. And there's 5 teams that had legitimate shots at the title, and Spencer just kind of put up a dud in the last week of the season, so you're really not going to win a title with 93 points. But it's impressive that anyone wins it all, but there's definitely a lot of luck involved, and Travis got lucky at the right time, and he also had a great team the whole season, so he put himself in position to win. Definitely just an interesting thought on don't give up too soon on your season. You never know what's going to happen.
So does this mean we're done making fun of him for Trey Burton for a hot sec, or what? Is that what we have to do now?
For a year, I think, right?
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Let's see what the next draft looks like.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's talk a little real football. Actually, obviously we didn't record anything in between the Splatty Bowl, which happened in week 16 of the regular season, so we didn't have playoff set yet. And now, what'd you guys think of Super Bowl or playoff runs in general? Was anything that stuck out to you in the world of real football?
It was just satisfying seeing the Chiefs lose and seeing penalty calls being a little different in the Super Bowl than last year. A few Chiefs fans out here in Chicago, it was fun listening to them complain about refereeing
when they kind of got their asses handed to them too. It's not like the refereeing was the deciding factor by any means. Nabil, what do you think? We lost Nabil for a second, it looks like. I'm gonna ditto you though. It was fun seeing the Chiefs finally lose. Like, it definitely felt like that. Like, he can't keep getting away with this meme. Like, the Chiefs went on an incredible playoff run, right? Where they won 5 games in a row. If you count like the 3 they won last year on the way to a Super Bowl title, and then the 2 that got them into another Super Bowl. They won those 5 games, and like they very easily could have gone 2-3 in those games. I feel like they were held in a vacuum. They very easily could have gone 0-5. They're a good enough team that but like they were losing in the second half in I think 4 of those 5 games. So to see someone kind of just finally knock them on their ass was satisfying, because I don't think the Chiefs were that good to be that like dynasty level.
Yeah, I think I would agree, and you're actually touching on a lot of the points I had. Sorry, I pulled up something trying to look at the score, and then I had an ad, and then the ad was making noise, and so I had to figure that out, and I didn't want to interrupt too much. But yeah, I think, everyone first says that game was boring, and was it to some extent? I actually found it to be kind of boring, but like not any different than some of the other games that have been complete blowouts or other things, right? But like, this is the second time that I feel like sometimes the Chiefs, they rely too much on just having this second half like blowout game or something where they have all the talent and they just like, oh, we don't have to care until the end. And they just couldn't turn it on. Like, watching that Tampa Bay defense was great. James, you talked about some of like the controversy or like inconsistent refereeing. And sometimes that's just football, and you just get the day that you just don't get calls. But in the end, they just weren't capitalizing on any opportunities that they were given. I was for a while like a big Tom Brady hater, and honestly, he's the GOAT. He has the right intensity. He lifts teams. He makes people more talented for playing with him. And so, good for the Bucks. Sorry, Chiefs fans. I enjoyed the game for what it was, right? So,
I think too, it's just kind of a nice reminder that in a league that is going so much more offense heavy, that it's still a battle of offensive and defensive lines, and that it wasn't just let Mahomes scramble and find one of the receivers who gets open after 5 seconds, but that if you don't have an O-line, it's pretty damn hard to win.
Exactly. Yeah, Tampa Bay game planned well. And I'm not trying to brag about it, but like going into the game, I couldn't believe that Kansas City was favored. It's like, it's a home game for Tampa Bay. They haven't lost since Kansas City beat them. And when Kansas City beat them, they scored most of their points in the first quarter, and I think it was only 10 in the second through fourth quarter, like 10 points. I was like, they have them figured out. They've got 2 weeks to prepare. They've got Tom Brady. They literally have no travel, no distractions from a normal Super Bowl. So I hammered the Chiefs or the Bucks money line and the under, and won like $250 gambling on that, because it doesn't. To me, it was as much as, yes, like the Chiefs and the Mahomes, like, and it could have gone totally the other way if they had been what we saw for a lot of the last 2 seasons. But like,
if their receivers didn't have stone hands.
Yeah,
right? I mean, like, that's the other thing. You look at it and like, I don't think any of us are saying Mahomes is overrated.
No,
right?
no, he's not.
Like
Yeah.
clear, like some of those throws that he was even able to scramble out
It was
of
insane.
and do something with that O-line. And the fact that receivers who had generally been relatively consistent for him just couldn't catch a ball. And I think a lot of that comes down to, it's like you look at all these receivers, they're either given like the short screen and because they're quick, they can get some distance, or Mahomes is so accurate on a deep ball that they can just literally bucket catch them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like they don't get too many, other than maybe Tyreek Hill, that get like solid in the hands, like passes. And I feel like when they needed them to actually catch the ball as opposed to like cradle it in, they just seemed like they couldn't do it.
Yeah, Mahomes was putting some zip on those passes and that he hadn't had to in the past. Is because there were one comparison, I think I made it to you, James, that, you know, like I was getting it, like the Chiefs just don't feel like that dynasty level team. I'm not saying they're not going to be back and competing for more Super Bowls in the next 3 or 4 years, but they honestly remind me a lot of the 2010s run that the San Francisco Giants had, where it's like they're very good. And if they end up winning multiple titles, they got pretty lucky because they are very good and deserve to win a title or two here and there. But I don't think it's unfair to say that those Giants teams, like, I don't call it a dynasty because they were never dominant. Like every time they won a title, like they squeaked by, they scratched and clawed, and like they were, as a non-Giants fan, I'm not trying to hate on them, like they earned everything, but it doesn't put them at the level of like dynasty, even though they won 3 titles in 5 years. In the 2 years that they didn't make the playoffs and had losing records. And to me, like this Chiefs team is very similar, where it's like, if they won a second title, it's like, are they really that good? Like we're going to have like, and I don't think that the like talking heads on ESPN would actually have gone that route. I think they would have like, they wanted Mahomes to be like this next Brady. But realistically, like, if they don't get back to a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, like I won't be surprised. Like there are good teams in the AFC that are coming up. The Bills are for real. Lamar Jackson's going to get it figured out, and he's going to make a Super Bowl at some point. You have to be really good, and you have to get really lucky to win titles in the NFL. And like you said, Tom Brady's the GOAT, and he proved that it's, you know, it's to me, I was happy to not have back-to-back champions for out of Kansas City, because I just don't think they're that good.
I think that AFC West has the potential of like being still one of the top divisions in the AFC.
Oh yeah,
because like even to the point of like the Raiders, but like they look somewhat decent. If the Chargers really have a decent quarterback and can like for some reason figure out that they have all this offensive talent and they can capitalize it, they have Joey Bosa. They've had like good defenses. They just are always that team that I feel like, you know how we talk about teams getting lucky? The Chargers have been consistently unlucky, and I cannot figure out why they can't figure it out. And then you have Denver, right? If they can make a move and figure out something with their quarterback, and I feel like they have a pretty good foundation to move forward there. And so, I mean, maybe Elway needs to get out of choosing quarterbacks there, because I mean, they're starting to look like the Browns with how many misses they've made, but we'll see. I think the AFC is going to be a really competitive conference. And then when you have the NFC, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the Buccaneers look the same way next year, assuming nothing kind of falls off. Because like that offense, it's funny, I was just playing with them in Madden. Like that's a stacked offense. And like you could not make it easier for Brady. As you want someone who knows football, has a good football mind, someone who can make the passes, isn't afraid to make the passes. And at that point, you have a pretty good offensive head coach. So like all of that is set for that team's success. Not to mention the Bucs over the last couple of years have actually had solid defense. So it's like, all right, here we go. Let's see if Brady can make another dynasty, though I don't think it'll ever be as dominant as the Patriots were, because you don't have the Belichick Brady. You don't have
it literally can't
defensive mind.
It literally can't be that long too. Like as much as Brady's going to play, like is still going to keep playing. Like, it won't be another 20 years, you know?
It's just weird because they're also in a division. Like, the weird thing is that, you know, the AFC East was literally the worst division like ever, I feel like, for that long. And they're maybe starting to pick it up. But like the NFC South, like, has, you know, the Saints, Falcons, Buccaneers, and Carolina, like those are all 3 or 4 teams that are like generally pretty good, and they'll figure it out. So there's no way there's like prolonged dominance.
As far as trips to this, like not titles, but just Super Bowl appearances, do you know which team in the NFC South has the longest drought now?
Is it the Saints?
Is it the Saints?
Saints.
That's crazy.
Falcons and Bucks have all been, and only the Bucks got it done. But
I guess the Saints have had just heartbreak after heartbreak.
They've ran into
conference.
Every year the Niners are good. They end up beating them in the playoffs. Like
Minnesota Miracle, like twice.
They've lost in Seattle, you know, the Beast Quake. The NFC South is, now that the Bucks are good, like literally it's one of the top divisions over the last 20 years. With, I'd say, I mean, if you forget about the early 2000s, the NFC West and the AFC North are the other two that like have been good at getting teams to the Super Bowl. The NFC West, actually, it's Seattle is also the team with the longest Super Bowl appearance drought.
Wow.
Arizona,
they might not even have Russell Wilson much longer, so.
You're right, especially after JJ Watt goes to Arizona. I was like, are you kidding me? Like,
now imagine Jimmy G, baby.
This division. All right, you want to talk Jimmy G? Let's talk Jimmy G. I just want to point out that once again, I'm not trying to brag, but like, we're going to keep talking about the 49ers quarterback situation until we're blue in the face, but it's going to be Jimmy G in the end. Like there's not like a good option out there, you know, like the Watson hype, like the Rodgers hype, even the Stafford hype. Like just the way that the cap is going to work out, like I don't see anyone other than Garoppolo starting for the Niners come September. James, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's just so much excitement because this free agency in particular has so many quarterbacks that normally you wouldn't see on the free agent market.
True.
And having lost a Super Bowl and having a quarterback that is not the most exciting to watch has stirred up a ton of drama, but I don't see them with the cap crunch trading for Watson and giving up a bunch of draft picks that they're going to need to fill in holes with cheap replacements. The only like splash move I can see is maybe a little move up for like Fields or potentially Zach Wilson. I think Mac Jones is getting some hype lately, which I have no idea what to think anymore of him. I think he could be good, but it's just so split. But yeah, I think it's like sign a veteran and maybe draft a rookie, but unfortunately, I think Watson's out of play.
Yeah. Nabil, what do you think?
So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, Chris, you're right. They're going to stay with Jimmy G. And I think even with all our ranting, I don't think James and I actually thought that was going to be something that was really going to change. But what I cannot agree with you is that this is not the answer, right? Like Jimmy G will, like this, I don't think this is a bold prediction, will not be lifting the Lombardi trophy for the 49ers, right? But I do think we kind of had an off-air discussion of he is going to be someone that could at least hold the reins while maybe we build a solid foundation, maybe look at wide receivers and get like a solid offensive line going for a quarterback that we draft in this draft. And maybe there is something that we build for the future as opposed to having to just focus only on getting the next hottest name in free agency when they're either towards the end of their career or, you know, keeping Jimmy G for whatever he is. He won't necessarily lose us games to not make playoffs. He'll lose us games when it matters because that's just how he is. But I mean, we're gonna have to settle with Jimmy G. I'm excited to see kind of what comes out of the draft. I will be doing my little research so that I don't know who they are now. I don't know all the prospects, but I'll be doing my little research, and I'm excited to see kind of what does happen because I think in general the NFL is going to look different. I'm not stoked to watch JJ Watt and is it Chandler Jones come at Jimmy G and for him to make a decision that way, especially if our offensive line just looks like a turnstile. So like, I think it's just we got to wait and see. And I'm not gonna lie, like I have a gut feeling that we're just gonna take another fucking offensive lineman, and I'm just gonna be sad because there's a few wide receivers that I think it's been some time since I looked that were exciting coming into this draft as well.
So to me, the game, and I'm not a GM, but if I was a GM, the game plan's got to be to bolster the secondary. The defensive line, when healthy, is insane for the Niners. We've got a decent enough linebacking core, but the way the league is going, we cannot continue to get beat on deep threats. We cannot give those up. And if the line has, if you give the line 3 seconds of no receivers open, like they're gonna hit the quarterback a lot. And Garoppolo is a good enough quarterback with the great defense that he had 2 years ago to go to a Super Bowl. That's not me saying that he has the potential. I'm saying that he has done that. The defense needs to Garoppolo has the weapons. Kittle's gonna end up being one of the top 5 tight ends of all time when it's all said and done. Ayuk is a stud. It doesn't really matter if we, don't keep, Bourne or Sanders, whoever. Like Kyle Shanahan has been able to slot in all kinds of different receivers into successful roles there. Like we've got plenty of, Debo is also we've got him as a deep threat. We've got a ton of options. I guess
there is a young core that's like, I don't know, I still feel like bolstering up maybe more weapons for Jimmy where he's not just feeling like he can only look one direction. But I would also agree that getting a defense that doesn't allow the big play to put more pressure on Jimmy is what the Niners need, because that's where I feel like if you look at almost every mistake that he's made, it's when he feels that he needs to make this big play. And that's always where the mistakes are.
Yeah.
Right. Like whether the score is close and they feel they need to get the next touchdown to like change momentum, boom, he'll throw a pick. Or like if it's a really close game and he needs to get in field goal position or set up so that the clock can run down so they can hopefully throw a touchdown, or they can run a touchdown to kind of kill more time, then he makes a mistake. So it's like, I agree with you. Getting a secondary that can kind of stop the deep ball, to get the shifts in momentum of the game, kind of shut that down, then yeah, I agree. I feel like we've had Swiss cheese at like cornerback. Like,
yeah, I mean, Sherman was our best player in the secondary for the last 2 years, but he also is injured like quite a bit, a lot of games, and he doesn't. I don't think he wants to make the switch to free safety, even though he could probably play longer. But he thinks of himself as a cornerback, and he's going to be a Hall of Fame. He should be a first ballot Hall of Fame cornerback.
He will be.
I do want to make. I'm going to describe a player to you. That was drafted by a Bay Area team. We used a pretty high pick to acquire this player. Right before we got him, there was an injury, or there was a pretty successful run that we'd had, where we had gone deeper into the playoffs than we ever had before. Just a few years before acquiring the player, we get this guy. There's a lot of hype coming in. He's injury prone, specifically with ankles, and for 2 years people are saying get rid of him. We finally give him all right, let him play. He finally has a couple of injury free seasons.
You're not talking about Steph Curry, are you?
Yes, I am.
Jimmy G is not Steph Curry. That's a horrible comparison.
I'm not saying that he's Steph Curry. I'm not saying that he's going to be anywhere near as good as Steph Curry is on the basketball court, but you talk about positionally wise, he's point guard, is the quarterback of the offense. Nabil hates my take, I can tell. But look, I know like he's injury prone and that's not good, but like you can't, like he has been successful when he's been on the field, and to just give up on him just doesn't seem like the kind of front office decision that the 49ers have built themselves up to be, with this like very fit family first, we're all in this together type of attitude. I'm not saying he's going to be Steph Curry, but like I've seen this play out before, and I've seen a Bay Area team finally give someone a chance to just go with it. Hopefully,
I agree with giving him a chance. I think last year in particular, with the amount of injuries to the O-line, the run game slows down, and we forget how powerful of just how rounded of an offense we have with a healthy team, and how good Jimmy G can look if the run game's there and if he has time to throw. But I mean, Steph changed the game, and I don't think you can argue that Jimmy G will ever change the quarterback position in the NFL. He's just so much more boring.
Other than making it prettier.
He is handsome. I'm not saying that he's going to be the next Steph Curry, but I say there's a lot of parallels. Nabil, I'll give you a final word on this.
No, I think we're good. I like the idea of you making a ridiculous claim that he's anything similar to Curry. I'm kind of cool with that. I'll let that sit so that I can start making fun of that next year.
All right, let's go back to some fake football. We don't have to go through all of these, but I do want to talk about, like as we hopefully do a couple more off-season ones of these, like some rule changes for the league, and what we want to do, how we want to change things around. I sent out an email, January 4th, so over 2 months ago. So I'm going to just go through some of those bullet points as a starter. And just kind of want to...
I didn't read that.
That's fine. So hey, it looks like it's all but said and done. The NFL is going to add a 17th game, a week 18. If you've looked at the proposed schedule, the Niners absolutely... So it'll be all cross-conference games. So basically, each team will play one, or each division will play one division, and like how the extra interconference game works, it'll be based on where you finish in the standings. So the NFC West will be playing the AFC North on the road, which is a bummer, and then the AFC teams will flip and come to us next year. But because we finished in 4th place, the Niners get to play Cincinnati as their extra game, and Seattle will play Pittsburgh. The Rams will have to play Baltimore, and or who finished? I don't remember who finished second, but the Rams and Arizona will have to play Baltimore and Cleveland. And the Niners get Cincinnati. So I'm going to say for once the schedule seems to be working in San Francisco's favor. But as far as fantasy football goes, what do we do to the whole season with we have an extra week to work with? And I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm curious if you guys have any of the similar thoughts on what we could do as far as schedule change. I have heard some dissension that maybe we should just still end the season on week 16 and just have 2 extra. But I'm thinking I don't want to end the fantasy football season early if I don't have to. I want it to run all the way up through the end of December. If they're playing meaningful football games with, no one's going to be sitting in weeks. No one's going to sit week 17 if that's not the last game, in my opinion. So I would like to extend it by one week. What else can we do with it? James, any thoughts on how we can toy with the schedule?
Yeah, I think the only thing you could do is like a play-in game, an extra round of the playoffs, to incentivize teams not selling early and expanding the playoffs slightly so that the teams who would have normally made it aren't penalized, but the teams who are scraping at the bottom have some incentive to stay relevant.
Like expand to 8 and maybe have or expand to 7 and have 6 play 7 to get in that last spot, or expand and give double buys or
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Nabil, what do you think?
Kind of like that idea. I think the other is maybe we some of us are big European soccer fans, so maybe we do a 2-week final and take an aggregate score as I think in the end, right, we would love to all say that the best team wins the final, right? And while that might not be the case as it relates to maybe someone getting by during a wild card or losing in the semi or quarterfinal or whatever, it might be good for the final to help someone who may have had an unlucky week, right? Yeah. I think a good example is looking at this final, right? Ryan has been a pretty dominant team as well. He got unfortunate putting up 109, right? So if he could then have one more week, puts up 135, Travis puts another 120, we have a closer game. It kind of corrected itself. Maybe Travis just had two consistent weeks, but it wasn't enough because Ryan had the potential of getting his team back, right? You could argue that could be a lucky bad week and a lucky good week, averages out. But I think that's the other idea, right? You can either tag it on the front or tag it on the end. But I do think probably want to lean towards keeping people more involved for longer as opposed to just two people watching or everyone watching two people play.
I think there's other ways we can keep more people involved for longer too, with incentivizing the consolation bracket with other stuff, and we'll get to that. Because I don't want to make any decision in a bubble, like it all applies to it, but because I think you're hitting the nail on the head that we want to keep everyone actively engaged and having something to play for, but also we want the best team to win. I hadn't thought of doing a 2-week final. I really like that idea. It would conflict with one thing I was kind of bouncing around. I really like the idea of extending the regular season to 14 weeks. We're going to make sure that there's no buys in our playoffs if we do that, right? There's not going to be a week 15 bye. And sometimes the NFL just gets wonky and decides to throw one in like week 13 or week 14. So if we expand the regular season all the way out to week 14, we avoid basically ever having to worry about bye weeks, I think, which would be not and that would suck if you have a playoff team that has to sit someone because they're on bye. Yeah. I've also thought about, as far as balancing the schedule, do we look at going 3 divisions of 4 teams? And how we pick divisions, we can change that up every year. We can keep divisions and establish those rivalries, but having divisions helps as far as scheduling goes. I think it could be more fun to keep more teams involved too, because if you're 5-5 and you're maybe not really looking at a playoff spot, but your division leader's only 6-4, you got to you're in it. And with only 3 divisions, you're not guaranteeing a bad team a spot in the playoffs. Also, you're not, and we don't have to guarantee, if the top 2 teams are out of the same division, they get the buys. We don't have to give division title winners we can be smart about how we give out those playoff spots. But I think doing divisions would be fun. There could be some incentive on okay, Nabil can't hear what's going on. I
could, but you don't read the chat. The chat is just to communicate with you.
I don't care. We're gonna.
I heard most of the playoff stuff, but I didn't hear all of it. So if you were to go to me, I wasn't gonna hear it.
Well, so the idea is that having divisions kind of with division champions getting three playoff spots, 3 wild cards is an option. I'm curious what other people think of that. The divisions can change; they could stay consistent year to year. That was kind of what I had been kicking around, but I like the idea of potentially doing a 2-week championship, which wouldn't really work with this. Also, if we expand the regular season to 14, whether we do divisions or not, we expand the regular season to 14, it's an even number of games, and that just looks nicer in my opinion. So you can go 500. You're not either one game or one below or above. Let's go back to James. Thoughts on my idea or Nabil's idea, or just let's kick it around.
Yeah. I like the division idea, and I think it could be fun each year. The champion not only determines draft order, but determines how divisions are set. So it could be age, geographic location. I think it adds a fun twist to the champion's power. But I also like that certain weeks in the regular season have more weight than normal. Is fun. And I think adds a lot of playoff feel to the regular season if you're up against someone in your division that week plays a lot of weight, and that's fun. I like that. I think there's a lot of conversation about logistics and ensuring that a shitty team doesn't just make it because of a weak division, but on a high level, I like it. I think it could be a lot of fun.
I mean, I think we could just say you have to have a winning record or at least a 500 record. Like we can make that rule that like no division champion gets in with like a less than 500 record. I've played in a league that has divisions, and the last 2 years, my last game of the season was a division matchup that was for the division title. And it gives it that playoff feel that you're talking about. It is fun. Nabil, your thoughts?
I'm kind of open to a division, the kind of division idea, and then maybe, we've talked about how to determine a draft order, right? That becomes fair. If giving the power to the winner of the league to determine the divisions, and then having a consistent yearly draft order. That way we're not always like, you could set, hey, draft order is set, even though we generally know how to do it. Or maybe there's like little lotteries that kind of get the excitement towards the draft, but like we can determine that February or March or whatever. We can talk about how that kind of alters the off season. And then for fun, the winner gets to determine next year's divisions. And I think maybe restricting that to not just like getting to choose who's in each, but like creating parameters that determine that. Kind of like what James said. Right?
Well, because I've thought about like geographic ones. So if we did 3 groups of 4, like geographic divisions, obviously the 2U and Devon are the 3 outliers now. Like, so who gets put in the like non-California?
You have to just look up each address and see which one's farthest east within California.
Who gets kicked all the way to the non-California division, because there's a natural fit, like or do we go based on like, I think a fun way would be like hometown divisions too, because it's like you've got the 3 of us that are from Aptos and Kevin in Santa Cruz make a very natural like Santa Cruz division. We've got mostly Bay Area though. Beyond that, like I know Antonio and Drew are from Southern California, but like I'm really just spitball. So like, how do you like? I don't know if there's a clean way to split it, but I think it could be fun. Like that's the thing. Like who gets kicked out of the California divisions and has to travel all the way to New York or Chicago or Texas.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, it's funny. You could have the Dallas Cowboys of the NFC East, right?
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't ever make sense, but I'm wondering, like, with that too, right? You can like forget. Are most of our Bay Area people originally born East Bay? Like, I think I had
it written down at some point. I
think I might be the only like Peninsula or San Francisco. So maybe it's like you throw me into the Southern California, and then because Travis is technically originally from the Sac or out by
he's from
Jackson, right? So that's like out near Sac. So maybe you do like a Bay Area East division. Do we have anyone from Marin?
I'm from Santa Rosa, which is just north of
Marin.
Oh
yeah, Devon.
Maybe it's like
Devon's from Marin County.
Huh?
Devon's from Marin County.
So maybe it's something where it is like me, you, Devin, and I don't know. We'll figure out someone else in there.
Hold on. Let's. I'm actually. I think we know it all. Let's
save the division talk. But I think in the end, I think what we're getting to is we don't need to figure this out. If that is instead the reward, the league reward for the winner, as opposed to a draft order, we determine now to kind of make it fair. If you're last place, you're the first pick. And then there's like the
So here was my thought on, and I hope that a lot of people listen to the podcast so they can kind of hear it. And I'm more than happy to write it out too. But I think just the first round picks should be determined by the consolation bracket. Like the top half, the first 6 picks should be determined by the consolation bracket to give everyone something to play for. After that, it could be randomized, and that could still be the winner chooses how it's ran. But essentially, the 7th place team, the winner of the consolation bracket, in my opinion, should be able to get that first pick with the 8th place team coming next, then 9, 10, 11, 12, essentially, like you're playing all of those consolation games, since you're gonna have to play something. All of those games count towards your basically again the first overall, like you win the first overall pick. After, like, that doesn't, and then in this back half of the first round, the playoff teams, like those can be randomized like based on the order, but just the very first half of the draft, I think giving the teams that don't make the playoffs something to play for is overall going to just be beneficial. And then we could still do a decathlon or whatever for like the overall draft order. But that's kind of my thought. And then it doesn't, basically that de-incentivizes teams from trading away their first round pick if they know they're gonna not make the playoffs, right? Like you're only, like, if you now but it doesn't stop you from trading your first round pick, right? Like you still might give up your one to go all in on a player because like, dude, I'm 8-2, like I'm gonna make the playoffs, I'm good, like I like might as well give up my first round pick and go for it. But the teams that are like Drew, who a couple years ago gave up his first round pick and then missed the playoffs, like that's a huge, it's like you better be going, like you better already have a good team and know that like you're not just selling a first round pick as like a last ditch effort. It's like, no, like I'm giving up the number one because I'm like going all in on this year for a good reason. What do you guys, what thoughts on that?
I think we should, only because we are hitting an hour, which is because we haven't talked to each other forever, and so we're trying to hit a lot. But it wouldn't be the worst for us to kind of, not that we are like the say all be all of what rules are set, because especially we're going to have stuff that we can't really talk about for a while. Maybe a discussion on the like divisions and how divisions are set up and how divisions alter schedules, and how that works for playoffs is a discussion that we have.
That's a whole.
Yeah. And then I do think talking about this draft thing should probably be a whole thing, because I think I could probably debate what you just kind of described as and then in the end, we're going to have to put it down to a vote anyway, but only in the case of time. Like if there are other rules that we want to discuss that are maybe interesting, and then we can have like shorter conversations about, sure. But this one, I think what we're about to talk is a long one. So I don't know if we want to we can dive into it, kind of end on this kind of discussion and then talk about the other ones later. I'll let you kind of be the arbitrator on that one, but
yeah, no, I we could talk about this for another hour, which is why I think you're right. It's its own show, but I just wanted to make sure that I at least got initial reactions from the two of you before we just dropped it. So
I think that however your first round is should also be somewhat similar. For me, I think it comes down to, are we ready to go to a regular draft style or a standard draft style or a snake draft style, or if we stay with snake draft style. And I think that's because I still kind of like the idea of what you're talking and doing a hybrid of that, but then that just determines your snake draft, right? And that will,
it's tough with traded pick. It's tough because we allow pick trading. It's never going to be a true snake or snake, but like, and that's it's a long discussion for sure. James, your thought?
Yeah, I like incentivizing. There's something teams not in the playoffs are playing for. I think I would love to see like a lottery component built in. Okay. First, just selfishly for a reason to get on Zoom and see everyone. But also I like the uncertainty of like 7th just doesn't lock into the first overall pick, and there's still drama around what happens in the off season and if players move, and is the first overall pick valuable? Do you want it? Or there's still the randomness of,
I mean,
the lottery.
You could trade, like you could turn that into a tradable commodity, like your lottery chances, like, like how many times is your name in the hat, like you get to put your name in the hat 10 times out of say 25, right? If you say you get 40%, you get 10 by winning the consolation. But like, hey man, maybe you trade all of them, 5 of them for a keeper that you want or something. Like, I mean, that's probably getting way too complicated and convoluted. Even the NBA doesn't do that with their draft lottery. But I like the idea of adding a lottery on top of that. So it's something to play for, but it's not the end all be all. Okay, yeah, definitely. But like Nabil said, I think there's a lot we could do. As far as having that conversation. The last one I want to point on or touch on now, I think it's a pretty simple one. How do we feel about the IR slots? We're not going to have 10 like we did last year, which is the max amount that Yahoo did. But I think there are arguments against it. I think it would be good to just move to a couple of permanent IR slots, and at least one for me should stay permanent. But I would argue that 2 is probably fine for our league. That's what I would propose, is that we go to 2 IR slots to be, any player listed as IR out, you can put on there.
I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, I think it just makes like long-term planning more interesting and a lot of different things. Yeah.
Nabil?
I'm always in favor of more IR as it relates. COVID, obviously, I agree. We don't need 10, but I want 2. I would think 2 unrestricted IRs is fair, especially as we get, and this was I'm sure one more topic that we can talk about if you're bringing up the rules, which is the number of keepers, which probably in the end will be another longer conversation. But I think if we're staying at 2, the idea of having 2 IRs, I can almost see those mirroring each other, just in the case that your 2 studs that are your long-term keepers get injured. You're not put in you can argue like we can all discuss or argue both whatever points, but I do think having 2 IRs will at least help someone who has a really good keeper pick at a higher value that they just can't get rid of, but don't have to hinder their entire season because holding on to them. Given we do have a pretty large bench, but I do think 2 IRs, and I'm cool even staying at 2 IRs for a while, but I agree with at least an additional IR slot.
The only reason I kind of shook my head I just don't think the IR and keeper slots need to be like mirrored or hand in hand. I think those are 2 separate issues, but they're related. Like you're not wrong. You don't there's certain guys that you're going to stash on your bench right now that are just there for their keeper value. As far as keeper expansion goes, this year we're going to have 2 going in. We're going to do the same thing that we've done, but I would absolutely be okay with expanding keepers into maybe just making the jump straight to 4, or going up to maybe we re-ramp it up and we go to so you get 3 keepers into the 22 season and 4 into the 23 season, something like that, just so we don't flood the market with keepers. I think the Rule 9 draft kind of supplements keepers right now, and the more keeper selections we add, the fewer selections that are going to be made in Rule 9, which might be a good thing. Like right now, because Rule 9 kind of shows you that essentially on average everyone's gotten 2 players for the last 2 years from Rule 9, which essentially means there is value in our teams to have about 4 keepers each, is a way that I'm kind of interpreting that. So if we expand to 3 or we expand to 4 keepers, there's probably very few players that actually are worth it in the Rule 9 draft. And if it ends up getting phased out and doesn't make sense to do anymore, then I'm totally fine with that, because it is convoluted and complicated, and it's difficult to explain to people outside the league. But I think moving to a closer to I don't want to go true dynasty, but moving closer to a true hey, it's a long-term plan that they're coming up with. It would be good for the league to expanding to 3 or 4 keepers. Also, I've toyed around with the idea of maybe we add a keeper slot, but you can only use it for a quarterback, or only or that type of do we put positional restrictions on keepers, or even do we use your quarterback keeper slot? Do we change the rules? I don't think we can right now, but do we change the rules on how fast players are accelerate out of those keeper contracts? I don't necessarily want to change that, but I've thought about kind of all that. Keeper rule ideas or thoughts. I'm not necessarily proposing anything. I do think overall adding more is a good idea in the next couple of years, but I'm not proposing anything officially yet. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a ton to discuss there, and that's probably a whole future episode. But in general, I think I like the Rule 9 draft, and I would hate to see that completely phased out. I think it really is a fun game to see who values which player and is willing to overpay, and gives you the opportunity to overpay for a guy that you believe in. So I could see like a third keeper to be the right balance, but I think there's a lot to talk there.
I would agree. I think it's kind of funny that I feel more times than not, we're always stuck with feeling like, if I had one more keeper, I would have a solid decision and I'd feel comfortable. Now you give us the third, we'll say the same for the fourth.
True.
I agree with James. I think the Rule 9 is actually a really interesting. I know who cares what other people thinking about it outside of the league, but like in the end, I think it is fun to start bidding, and like it can turn teams from a team with one keeper who doesn't look like they can even make a chance at playoffs next year, which doesn't happen all that much, right? Anything can happen in the draft, to like looking like a stud team right off the bat because they've made this like really strong decisions on putting picks towards players that are going to help them in the future. And so I think the Rule 9 is a unique thing that is helpful for the league. And maybe that changes as we talk about how draft stuff goes. I think a third, I would definitely agree with going to at least a third. I think considering jumping to 4 and seeing what it does. But then maybe like, this sounds stupid, but like I would assume this league is going to go on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So like putting hey, we're going to move to 4 for the next 5 years, right? Like I know it can be weird, but like I think our biggest thing is that we try a lot of things, which is great for the development of the league, but like we need to live with those decisions. So like making hey, we're going up to 4 for 5 years. That's what we're going to live. We're not going to change the keeper kind of
had 2
structure
for about 5 years now. I think and I think it's worked well, and it's just probably about the right time to reevaluate.
I do have one more. Sorry, was the other thing that you could do with, you can go 3 with an additional 4, maybe, but that fourth has a consequence. Maybe it's a higher inflation rate, right?
Yeah. Or, that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's it. It pretty much comes down to, it's like, or that maybe that fourth keeper is a one-time keeper, can't keep it again kind of person. And so it's like a high consequence, but maybe it could even be, maybe it's someone who would fall as a first round keeper. You can keep them, but that's it. Like you can't obviously keep them the following year. Or maybe it's a non-consequence keeper where you can keep first rounders or someone who's outside of our kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's not someone that you drafted the year before, but you can keep, but it's a one-time keeper. And that's like your penalty for doing that.
James, you look like you had something to say.
Yeah, or something, if you don't use a keeper slot, you get like a compensatory middle round draft pick, like a 4th, 5th rounder at the end of the round, if you're not wanting to any of your 4th keepers.
Is that just helping people who sucked at the draft the year before, though? Like
that's true. That's fair.
Like, I mean, that's like,
I think you could do it if we had a certain amount of keepers. If we're up to like 4, you can only do it with like your 4th keeper slot. But then, yeah.
No, you'd want that consequence to happen if you have less, or like, I feel like if you didn't keep 2+, then you would get at least a compensatory, because I think all of us are going to probably be able to find 3. So that 4th pick becomes, if that was to get it, right?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna chew on all that for a bit, but I think I've got a handful of episodes ready to film at this point. One thing I do want to point out, because Nabil, you did say the Rule 9 with keepers, like this is why it's all connected. If we do switch to like a standard draft where you're always like, if you got the first pick in every round, that really, really, really throws a wrench into Rule 9.
Sure.
Like, because now you're just always just a little bit, like, you can always just be a little bit ahead of and that's kind of the whole point of a standard draft too, though. Like, you're all like, actually the top being bad last year and being at the top of the draft helps. Which is why we don't need to go on all the specifics, but I think it's important to point out that all of this is connected, and we need to make sure that we go into a league season with knowing what we're doing and not getting blindsided by a couple bad rule combinations. But I think that all of it should be up for discussion. I think we should have multiple episodes over the spring and summer as we try to talk this out, and hopefully people are listening and can chime in or even jump in and be with us. But yeah, it has been, I think, an hour of filming at this point. So we should probably call it there. Thanks everybody for listening. James, you got any last words?
No, I wish I did. No.
All good. Nabil, what about you?
I'm ready to fucking win, man. I'm tired of not making playoffs. I feel like it's been a few seasons, so I'm coming your way. I'm doing my research.
Nabil's already counting down the days till he gets to roster bait again. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. We'll talk again soon. Hopefully, hopefully we don't take a 2-month hiatus. Hopefully it's more like a week or a couple weeks, and we're back on chatting a little bit. But thanks everyone for listening, and see y'all soon.